welcome to the third session this afternoon. It's called Open New Doors.
As David said, the Green Deal is one of the government's big flagship policies for energy efficiency. Traditionally, government policies tended to focus on insulation measures, and this government realised early on that that wasn't enough. We need to widen this. We need to look at the whole house. We need not just look at energy efficiency, but the way we use energy in the home, new ways of generating energy in the home. So the Green Deal isn't a traditional scheme in the sense that it's a government subsidy. It's a framework which allows private sector financing to actually come in to help people actually pay for energy efficiency. And in a nutshell, it is like a loan, but instead of a mortgage, it's actually attached to your home. So it isn't attached to you, the individual, it's attached technically and legally to your meter. So that means if you take out energy efficiency measures, they will be paid back, and those payments linked to the house, not the house owner. Now that's quite unique. We've never done that before. Actually, nobody's ever done that before. So it's a very new approach. So it actually takes the burden away from the individual. In terms of what the Green Deal is, it's a process. There are three essential stages. The first stage is an assessment. Before you get a Green Deal, you need an energy efficiency assessment. It's very much like the current EPC, but only it's an improved version of the EPC.
The what, sorry, the EPC?
The energy performance certificates you have when you sell a home. Only this is slightly more improved. The new standard has just been published, I think, and is actually, I think, being refined at the moment. But essentially that will look at your home. It will allow an assessor to calculate what you can potentially save and what measures will deliver those savings. And what you end up at the end of this is something like a prescription. It basically sets out the sorts of measures you could have in your home at a high level. So it will say, you might need a new boiler, you might need new windows, you might need insulation. You can then take that to Green Deal providers and get a quote on that, and they can provide the service. The Green Deal provider is also unique and new in this process. The Green Deal provider is responsible for pulling the Green Deal together, organising the finance. The Green Deal provider can be a number of things. It might be a large organisation, a high street chain. It could be an SME working with other SMEs. We've been talking to trade bodies.
It's a small to medium-sized enterprise, isn't it?
It could be.
I always ask that.
There are lots of potential models for that. The Green Deal provider essentially manages the process. And then you have installers. Installers will then install the measures. The Green Deal provider will then effectively sign off those measures and set up the repayment programme for the homeowner. So the Green Deal provider does all the legwork, basically. In terms of the sorts of measures we'll be covering, it's everything from solid wall, cavity wall, the traditional insulation measures, to energy efficient products, to energy efficient heating systems. Quite a wide range. There's about 22 measures, and I think it's probably going to go up to about 40 measures over the next couple of weeks. So there's a wide range of measures that can be installed. Key to the Green Deal are standards. Ministers made very clear in the early days that protecting consumers and high standards would be key and central to the Green Deal. What they didn't want is competition around standards. They didn't want standards to be dropped. So they set very clear minimum standards. For assessors, there's a new qualification, and anybody who wants to be an assessor has to meet that qualification. If you want to install under the Green Deal, there's something called PAS 2030, which is a new installer standard, which is essentially bringing together all the existing standards, but it's bringing them into one place, so that if you want to do a Green Deal, everything is referenced within that standard. If you want to be an installer under Green Deal, basically you have to be a member of an accredited certification body who will certify you to that standard. Now that might seem quite bureaucratic or sound quite bureaucratic, but hopefully it isn't. Because the way we've designed it is, if you're already operating in one of the measures, you already have a qualification, it should be a fairly light touch mechanism to actually get you into Green Deal. It's literally a matter of ticking boxes saying, yes, you've got that qualification, you have the relevant competence, therefore you can operate within the Green Deal.
Okay.
And that's it in a nutshell.
David, the approval process, how is that likely to map out?
Okay, I think it's quite useful to pick up on the last point that Dean made there, which is that it doesn't all have to be about things that are completely new. For members of schemes that already exist, we need to take account of the competence that's already being demonstrated. And in amongst the measures at the moment, PAS 2030, the British standard for this, has 26 annexes covering specific types of measure, and some of those are already covered by the schemes that we operate. So for instance, if you are doing electrical efficient lighting, if you're doing electrical heating, if you're doing electrical controls, if you're doing replacement electrical storage heaters, and then you're within a Part B scheme, then much of the competence you need is already covered by that. If you are replacing conventional heating, so condensing oil boilers, gas boilers, and installing heating systems associated with them and lagging those systems, your competence has already been proven if you're part of the competent person schemes under the building regulations for doing that. All of the MCS measures that NAPIT currently certify companies for, all of them are eligible for Green Deal. So they are all within PAS 2030, from wind turbines to PV panels to solar thermal to heat pumps. Everything is included, provided it can be funded. So many of the things that we already know about our members form part of the approval process. And for those of you that are familiar with this, most of you in the room will be inspected by us, you'll be used to being audited by us and us coming out on site, and the process is pretty much the same. It is against a specific standard, and as Dean's already mentioned, the standard for installers is called PAS 2030, PAS 2030, which you can buy from BSI. And it basically outlines all the things that you have to comply with to become an installer. If you are interested in becoming a Green Deal advisor, there is a separate standard for that, which is a Green Deal advisor specification, which we can circulate, I think, free of charge, which tells you what you have to do for that. There are then a set of standards that we as NAPIT have to use in order to assess you. And those standards tell us that we have to do things that you would be pretty familiar with anyway, which is we have to come out and see you. We have to come out and check what you do and how you do it. It's probably nearer to MCS than it is CPS, in that there are a number of things that are to do with the way you run your business. So when we look at a company audit, we are looking for records, we're looking for contracts, we're looking for quotes, we're looking for training records, we're looking for you to have a complaint system. So these are all things that you should have. If you don't have them, it doesn't have to be onerous. If you're a small business, then at the back of PAS 2030, there are templates for each of those management systems, little simple forms that you can use for recording and resolving complaints, or keeping a track of the quotes you've made, or keeping a track of the work that you've done. So they don't have to be onerous. For those of you who are familiar with MCS, and maybe you're familiar with NAPIT's documented management system that we make available to MCS members, everything in that quality management system will be equally suitable for Green Deal. And it's something that we give away. So, people who get upset or stressed about needing to introduce quality systems, if you want a simple one for a small business, you can get it for nothing. There are free systems out there. If you're a larger organisation with more complexity, you will need more, but you're probably already getting into that complexity within your systems anyway. So that's the office part of it, and we would expect to do an office audit of a typical organisation within half a day. We then need to come out and actually see measures installed. Now, if you're already registered for some of those measures, then we can take that into account. But if they're new measures, then we need to see how they're done. Some of them we need to see completed work. You can't tell that something has been done correctly unless it's complete. But others we need to see work in practice. So if someone, for instance, was wanting to be certificated for cavity wall insulation, for instance, you can't evaluate whether cavity wall insulation has been done properly after the event. You need to see it happening. You need to see the actual practice in place. So, and that's for us to organise, but we need to come out and see work happening. There is one thing that's new in Green Deal compared to the other schemes, which is really affects the people who get a lot of work. We normally, as most of you would be familiar with, come out and see people every year or so. And in some cases, we're allowed to leave that 3 years, depending on the volume of work and the level of compliance that we've seen in the past. So there is a fairly relaxed basis if people have demonstrated that they're working well. Because Green Deal is relatively new, the rule is that we have to come and see 1% of all the installations that are carried out and at least one a year. So if someone gets a lot of work, anything over 200 starts to mean more inspections. But bear in mind, you would only be getting more inspections because you were being successful. So it's not too bad. On the Green Deal advisor side, there's more focus on the individual advisor. We would still be certificating companies who employ advisors, but there we have to go out and see a number of the advisors on witnessed visits. So I think the rule is the square root of the number of advisors. If you employ 4 advisors in a company, we've got to come out and see 2 of them. If you employ 16, we've got to come out and see 4 each year. But we also, within Green Deal advice, we have to look at 5% of the report. Is it 5%? 5% of the reports. We have to read them and make sure that we agree with the conclusions, which is a very similar thing that's done for energy performance certificate.
David, what about the small installer though?
So the small installer, on those ratios, if you imagine a small installer, the 1% won't mean anything, because until you've done more than 200 installations, we're seeing 1 a year. So that's broadly similar to what we would do now. And similarly, if you're a sole trader doing Green Deal advice, then the square root of 1 is 1. It's we can come out and see 1.
Sure.
So it's only these ratios that I'm mentioning only kick in as you become a larger organisation.
Andy, do you want to come in there? Simon, as far as you're concerned, how do you view the changes?
The changes to
the Green Deal.
Well, you know, as with any government scheme, you know, it's one of the things that in our industry, you know, we've come to live with, and in many cases we've embraced, you know, the Warm Front scheme, which is in a sense is the precursor to the Green Deal, has been a hugely successful scheme for the heating industry. So we're embracing it. We've engaged very heavily with DECC. And throughout the consultation process, Wolseley and a lot of my colleagues have spent a lot of time with DECC trying to help them shape the policy. In terms of what we're doing to help our customers, which is fundamentally why we're sat here now and why we're so enthusiastic about Green Deal, is we want to encourage small, medium-sized installers to participate in Green Deal. There is a very real risk for our industry and for small businesses that this becomes a playground for 6 big energy companies. So we're making it we want to make it easy for SMEs to participate, and we're doing that through training firstly. We're about to launch an accelerated Green Deal advisor course, which we believe will allow, by recognising existing skills such as gas safe, it will allow installers to become Green Deal advisors very, very quickly. And I think one of the philosophies that we have within Wolseley is that the installer is going to be the assessor. So there's a lot of discussion in the market that we're going to have a network of independent domestic energy assessors who are going to be running around doing EPCs and then almost selling them on street corners. We just don't see that model working. We're much more interested in a situation where many of you may be involved, where you walk into a property and there's a broken boiler. We want to give SMEs the tools that they can say, you can give me £3,000 in cash to replace that boiler. Alternatively, I can do a Green Deal assessment right now, and I can help you through that process. And potentially, for nothing or for a very modest upfront contribution, you can have a new heating system. So we're helping installers into that process.
David, back to you. In a nutshell, why is this Green Deal important to the people sitting here?
I think it's important partly because it overlaps with what many people already do. And therefore, if you're going to carry on doing the work that you do, then you will inevitably end up tripping over it, whether it's through your direct customers or whether it's through people who want to contract you in. Bear in mind, many of these measures may be being installed by companies that have got skills other than yours, but they need electricians if you're an electrician, they need plumbers if you're a plumber, they need heating engineers if you're a heating engineer, they need energy assessors if you've got those skill sets. So provided that you are able to utilise the skill sets that you have and consider expanding them into related areas, then it provides potentially a significant incentive, because your customers will have an incentive to go out and carry out some of these installations.
And briefly, Dean, the timescale?
The framework will be in place in October, and from what we've been told from providers, There should be a slow build-up from October over the first 6 months. So from October onwards, there will be green deals.